So we'll go to chapter 24.
Yes.
The role of government. When we talk about government, we're talking about an institution that governs the society or that governs the economy. That's government. It's an institution. So let's see the role of government in an economy. Okay, here they said factors that influence the role of government. A government plays a larger role in an economy operating a mixed economic system than one operating a more market-based economic system. How much the government intervenes in mixed economies differs according to both the perceived extent of market failure and how effective government policy measures are. So, when it comes to different economic systems, we have the market economic system, we have the planned economic system, and we have the mixed economic system. You have to say, a larger role in an economy operating a mixed economy, that government plays a larger role in an economy that is operating a mixed economy than one operating in a more market-oriented economy. So what they are simply saying is this: in a mixed economy, because a mixed economy means that it is combined with the public sector and the private sector. So in such sector, government takes larger roles than when the economy is strictly market. Because if the economy is market, it means it is controlled, resource allocation is done by individuals and firms. Yeah. So in a mixed economy, government still decides certain things there. And the role of government in such economy is more than that role of government in the market economy. Is it clear? Yes. So the government's influence on the local economy. Some local areas are very dependent on particular industries. Some of these industries may be state-owned industries. In this case, the government will be making decisions such as how much to produce and the wages to pay, which directly affect the local community. The industries which are in the private sector may be subsidized by the government to, for instance, prevent unemployment rising in a relatively poor area. So what they are saying in the first paragraph is about government's influence in the local economy. In the local economy, we're talking about the locally. Yes. Government might have some parastatals, that government-owned institutions like government hospital, government schools. Yes. They are the ones that decide what to produce, and they are the ones that decide the wages paid to workers. In other words, there might be private-owned businesses in those local community or local economy that government is subsidizing. So government has impact financially on those businesses. So why would government wants to do this? Government is doing it because it will enable those private firms to be able to employ more workers, because their cost of production would be less. So they won't be out of business like they want to, because if they're out of business due to increase in cost, they will let workers, they will lay off workers, yes, which is not good for the economy, which becomes problem for the government. Yes, unemployment will increase. And if unemployment increases, it increases unemployment benefits to the unemployed. So government expenditures would what? Would increase. Yes. Please take note of what I'm saying here. It's important. Government's influence in local community or local economy varies. We have government having its own businesses or parastatals in that local economy. Yes. So if that happens, government decides the allocation of resources, what to produce and the wages to pay to workers in such local economy. In the other way, government might subsidize for private firms in such local economy. So if government subsidizes for private firms in that economy, government is doing that to reduce the burden on them. For example, if those private firms are incurring more cost, they might need to reduce their costs by reducing the cost of wages. If they have to reduce the cost of wages, that means they might need to lay off workers. Laying off workers increases the expenditure of government, public expenditure, because government might need to pay unemployment benefits to those unemployed. So these are the reasons why government would want to influence or wants to have impact locally. Is it clear? Yes. That is the first paragraph. The second paragraph says, some decisions on economic policies will be taken here. And the last thing I didn't talk about is, some decisions on economic policies will be taken at the local level rather than the national level. The extent to which decisions are made at the local level differ from country to country. Local governments will provide a range of goods and services, including refuse collection, libraries, housing, and local roads. To finance this, local governments may impose some taxes and charges and may receive grants from the national government. government, we have different types of government. We have government at the federal level, we have government at the state level, we have government at the local level. The government at the local level is what we call the local government or the municipalities. The municipalities of Syria, municipalities. These municipalities, they also take decisions. Yes. They might be the one to provide local primary schools. They might be the one to repair or to construct roads within the street. Yes. So these things are done by them. So they are financed by them. So these are the impacts of the local government in the local community too. So that is what they are saying there. I think it's clear. Yes. So local government can also provide goods and services for their community. Clear? Yes. Now go to the functions of government at local and national levels. The government carries out a range of functions. It is an owner of industries and assets such as schools and hospitals, a producer or a regulator, a collector of taxes, and a director of the level of economic activity. So government can do all these things. Government can provide goods. Government can sell services. Government will be the one to regulate. Government could be the one to provide us with education. Government could be the one to provide us with healthcare. Government can do all these things. But if government is doing them, we call them public goods. Yes. Clear. Yes. Now go to government as a producer. A government may produce products which it believes are of key importance. The products that are produced by a natural monopoly, those which it thinks are essential and hence should be available to all, and those which the private sector may underproduce or not produce. There's market failure. This is where government comes in place. Because there's market failure. Market failure might be as a result of private firms not being able to produce public goods or public services. Underproduction of public goods or public services by the private firm is a market failure. So government will come in and produce these goods. Especially when government feel or think that these goods should be consumed by everybody. Merit goods like education and healthcare. These goods have to be consumed by everyone. But private sector would not provide them. You know why? Because private sector, there's one called free rider problem. Because of free rider problems, yes, the private sector cannot provide public goods. I think that is clear. Yes. So most countries seek to ensure that their key industry survives. Their key industries survive and do well. Key industries may be strategic industries or national champions. In China and France, basically, let me just state what they are trying to say here. Those industries that are strategic are those industries that hold the country, like the petrochemical industry, the educational industry. All these industries will not be left in the hands of the private sector. Government will hold them. Government will hold them tight, because they decide the economy, they decide the fate of the people. So government will not just leave it to the hands of the private sector. I think that is clear. Yes. So in a number of countries, the government also stops foreign companies from taking them over or merging with them, such as road infrastructure, which may be run or regulated by the government. Not only even for the private sectors, government will not allow multinationals to take charge of those strategic industries. Is it clear? So a government may also produce essential products such as housing on ground of equity and merit and public goods. Housing is important. Government will not leave it in the hands of the private sector. I think it's clear. Yes. So now we go to public sector contracts and partnership between the public and the private sectors. Private sector firms provide a range of products and services for the public sectors. For example, for the public sectors. For example, private sector road building firms construct and maintain roads for the government in many countries. And private pharmaceutical firms supply state healthcare system with medicines.
Like for example, Libya, right? On road.
For the road?
Yeah, firms produce like roads for the government.
Yeah. So what they are saying here is this. Government would not directly produce these roads. Government would contract it to private firms to take charge. Then the private firm will report to government. It will be financed by government, but contracted to the private firms, because they believe that the private sector or the private firms will be more efficient than allowing the government sector to do it. Do you get it?
Yes.
In recent years, in more and more countries, the government is forming partnership with private sector firms. A common form of partnership is where the private sector initially provides the services, the finance for a state project, such as building of a hospital. The private sector firm then build it and maintain it for a number of years. The government rent it and operates it, buying it back over time. You see, it happens even in Nigeria. Private firms would construct or provide or produce goods or services for a while. Then after a while, government will take charge. Government will buy it from them. It will be nationalized. Do you get the point there?
No.
Government does collaboration with private sectors now.
Yes.
Because government might not have that financial capability. Some private sectors do have. So they have agreement, they have bonds together. That, oh, we're going to construct this hospital. We're going to build this hospital. We're going to run it for the next 10 years. After 10 years, government have to buy it from us and we leave it for the public.
So
do you get it?
They will benefit from the hospital and then will buy it.
Government will then buy it and it becomes public good. Is it clear?
Yes, yes.
That is government as producer. Do you see how government becomes producer there?
Yes.
So now we go to government as an employer. The government employs workers and managers to operate its state-owned enterprises. Employing people helps the government to achieve some of its aims of the economy. To reduce unemployment, the government can employ more workers. To control rises in prices, the government can limit wage rises of its own workers and the price charged by its enterprises. It can also set an example in terms of employment practice by, for instance, providing its workers with good quality training, preventing discrimination, and ensuring good pensions to its workers. Government can also be an employer. And if government wants to, because one of the government aims is to reduce unemployment. And for government to reduce unemployment, government has to employ. So government can be an employer too, by employing more workers into their parastatals. That is what they are saying here. So to do that, government have to build more institutions, more enterprises. They have to invest on more enterprises to be able to employ workers. Because if they are able to do that, workers will have more income. People will have more income, which is good for the economy. So if government thinks that a lot of people, the demand in the economy is increasing, government could reduce the wages of workers with regulations, with laws. Do you get it?
Yes.
And for government can also help by giving training and education to their workers to make them more efficient. So this is government as an employer. Government would employ workers. Government would create institutions. Government would decide wages. Government could increase or reduce wages with reference to how the economy is or the economic situation. And government could provide training and education for their workers to be more efficient. Is it clear?
Yes.
So the role of government at an international level. So we're talking about international now. We're talking about the role of government within countries. Some government promote free international trade, allowing firms to export and import what they want. Other government place restrictions on what can be purchased from and sold to other countries.
Regulation.
We're talking about the role of government at an international level. It's either it is free trade or trade barriers. Free trade is the same as international trade. And when there is restriction of trade, it means there's a trade barrier. So that means export and import is not free. It's not accessible.
They have to tax on it, I think so.
Import, tariff. There could be tariff, there could be quotation, there are different trade barriers. But what it means is that there's no free trade in such country. So it is the duty of the government of a country to decide if it wants to relate with other countries or it doesn't want to relate with other countries. But if the government of a country place restriction on trade with other countries will do it to that country too. We call it retaliation. So if Turkey banned Libya and other countries from coming to Turkey, those countries could also ban Libya. Those countries could also ban Turkey. That is retaliation. So most of the time, government of different countries do not want trade restriction because it will affect them also in the long run. Because each country has its strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get it?
Yes.
So that's the point I'm making. So it depends on the government to encourage international trade or to discourage international trade. Clear?
Yes.
So government also vary in their policies towards foreign multinational companies. wanting to set up in their country. Some governments seek to attract them, believing they will generate jobs and increase the output that is produced in the country. Other governments stop foreign MNCs setting up in their countries as they think they will drive domestic firms out of business. The first thing we talked about with government, role of government internationally. Are you with me, please?
Yes.
The first thing we talked about the role of government internationally is international trade. Either the government allow international trade or discourage international trade. That's the first one. The second one is about multinational companies. When we talk about multinational companies, we're talking about companies that have their head office situated in one country and have different branches or plants in other countries. Some governments would allow multinationals to set up in their country because they feel with multinationals setting up in their country, it will increase the employment opportunity in such country, it will increase their output, and it could improve their GDP. That is the mindset of some governments. Other governments would think, no, multinationals coming into their country would chase away the local industries or local businesses, would take over the local market, which might not be good for them. So some countries would not allow MNCs, while other countries will allow. It depends on what their regulations are, what their policies are. That is the second point. Do you get it?
Yes.
So the third point is some governments are also members of trade blocs, such as the European Union, the African Union, and the rest. Trade blocs promote trade between the member countries and may restrict trade with non-members. There's trade bloc, which would like the Arab, like Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Sudan, the Arab world. Yes. You might be able to trade with each other freely because you have a trade bloc. You belong to one area. So you see, we feel like because we are Arab, we speak Arab together. So let's create this bloc. So we will trade freely with ourselves. We won't sell to other continents. We won't sell to other countries. If you are not part of the Arab world, we're not going to sell to you. And we might sell to you, but restricted in different terms, terms that are difficult to abide with. Do you understand?
Barriers.
So do you get
barriers?
Yes. So another way which government can decide is using trade blocs. So they deal with countries that surround them and leave aside countries that does not belong to their vicinity. Is that clear?
Yes.
So those are the ways in which government can influence internationally and locally. For locally, government can create jobs. Those goods that cannot be provided by the public sector, government will provide them locally. By the private sector, the government will provide them. Government will create employment. Government will increase wages. Government will decide to subsidize for firms to be able to increase employment. That is locally. Internationally, that's locally. Internationally, we talked about free trade and international trade. We talked about multinational companies. We talked about trading blocks. So these are government influence, both locally and internationally. I think it's clear.
Yes.
Any question about that?
No.
So go to the questions. The first question says, what is the name of an industry in which the most efficient numbers of firms is one? What is the name of industry? Monopoly. The most efficient number of firms is one.
B.
Natural monopoly. Yes. Thank you. Question 2. In what type of economy are most workers employed by the government?
Economy.
In what type of economy are most workers employed by the government? Planned economy. Thank you. The third question. Yeah. The government decides to limit the wage increase of state employees. What is it most likely trying to achieve? If government decides to reduce wage increase of state employees, what is government trying to do?
Decreasing wage. That's it. Decreasing wage.
So what is government trying to achieve?
A reduction in employment.
No.
But they don't want to reduce employment, but yeah. It's B.
B.
Yeah, B.
It's reduction in inflationary pressure. Because we said if income increases, demand for goods and services increases. And that brings about demand pull inflation. So government could use wage decrease to reduce the demand for goods in an economy.
Because it will reduce the income of the employees.
And it will reduce demand.
Yes.
Demand. Question 4. They said, okay,
This question 4.
Question 4. A move from a planned economy to a market economy is most likely to reduce what? If government is moving from the planned economy to a market economy is what?
From plan to market.
Yeah.
Employment in the agriculture. From plan to
Market is more likely to reduce what?
self-employment. I know.
When they are moving from planned economy
To
to market economy, what will it reduce? It will reduce employment in the public sector.
Yeah.
It will reduce employment in the public sector.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Many.